Good evening, book lovers. Welcome to another episode of Cath-Lit Live. I am your host, Amy Cattapan. You can find me everywhere on social media under my pen name for my children's books, AJ Cattapan. If you're looking for my books for teachers or my brand new book on Mother Cabrini, head on over to Ave Maria Press and you can find me there as Amy J. Cattapan. I have a new guest on tonight, and it's always exciting when I get to talk to somebody new. This is a young man with a fantasy novel that he's told me is appropriate for young adult and up. Might be considered high fantasy, if you will. So this may be kind of a new genre or an intriguing genre for some of you. His name is Christopher J. Rziha. He has completed his undergraduate studies at Benedictine College, earning degrees in philosophy, theology, and Spanish. He earned his MA at Baylor University and is currently completing his PhD in Spanish at the University of Notre Dame. Oh, he's like me. He likes to go for lots of degrees. He has published articles on theater and mysticism in the Spanish Baroque. He is happily married with 2 little boys, and he is the author of this new fantasy novel, The Way of Lucherium. So please help me welcome Christopher J. Rziha. Hi, Christopher. Welcome to Cath-Lit Live.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so grateful you were able to come on tonight and talk to us about your new high fantasy novel, The Way of Lucherium. So introduce us to this book. How would you pitch it to somebody if you had 30 seconds in an elevator to try to sell it to them?
Yeah, so I do it two ways. The first is the central question of the book, which asks, what if the effects or the realities of grace and sin, of deification or demonization, demonic possession of sacraments and cultures of death, what if their effects were made explicitly visible in our bodies, souls, and relationships? So we talk about receiving the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, and we talk about how that perfects us and that purifies us and that takes away venial sin. What would that look like? And the other way I like to explain it is it's a book about a bard named Geoffrey who is really, really ambitious and really bought into a society that's wholly devoted on progress. And he
Mm.
meets a couple of people who turn his life around, and he begins to realize that what he thought was progress may not be progress after all. And he has to completely reevaluate his life and the choices he's made and ask himself if he is willing to make the sacrifices and be vulnerable enough to open himself up to a lord to the extent that he would be willing to die for him.
Okay, intriguing. So, I was reading your bio here before, and you've got a lot of degrees. I can relate. I got a lot of degrees too. If you need moral support when you get to your dissertation, let me know. I've been there, done that. Um, but I see that philosophy, theology, and Spanish all in your undergrad. So, is that part of what led you to writing that? What inspired you? Was it this interest in philosophy and theology, or what was the impetus for writing this story?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that grad school really opened my eyes to the fact that I had been given the tools to write.
Mm.
And and that philosophy and theology and just generally a love for literature that my parents and my professors instilled in me had in some sense given me the vocation to write as well. So the short answer, of course, is to what inspired me to write The Way of Lucherium is the Holy Spirit. But the long answer is my fascination on many different levels with the relationship between grace and nature. And my area of study is Spanish mysticism. These fascinating saints who embodied a very personal relationship with God and who did it in a way that didn't subtract from their activities as reformers and as champions of the Catholic faith during a very fraught time in European history.
Now, tell us,
And
for somebody who might not know, like, who are some of those Spanish mystics? Are we talking about your Saint Teresa of Avila? Who are we talking about here?
Yeah, so St. Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross are the big ones, right? The ones that whose names come up all the time. But they inspired quite a following, and that's people as diverse as Luisa de Carvajal, who was a non-professed laywoman who went to England to try to convert the Anglicans, and José de Valdivieso, who was the spiritual advisor to Lope de Vega, the greatest playwright in Spanish history, who wrote Eucharistic plays to be performed as part of Corpus Christi processions, to Lope de Vega's own daughter Marcela, who was a nun, who wrote plays to be performed in her convents that dramatized the mystical way. So all of this is coming into play and inspired me to write The Way of Lucherium. And most especially something a professor told me once when he said that tragedy is the most enduring type of literature because it really gets to the heart of the human experience, which is loss. And I remember thinking that that's partially true. Our brokenness and our sinfulness really is an integral part of what we experience. But the beauty of the Christian faith and the Catholic faith specifically is that Christ doesn't just take on human nature, go to the brink of death and pull back, but that he goes through death and through this suffering and brokenness, and it's from that life and light and love are brought forth. So so I was kind of struck with the realization that I've been given the tools, even from like the standpoint of spiritual formation, to write something, to write this reflection on how does grace operate in our lives? What does it look like to have this relationship, with grace and nature, on a level that not everyone had been given. And that really inspired me to kind of sit down and start putting my thoughts in order.
Let's talk a bit about your characters. Like, how did you come up with the ideas for these characters? Were they inspired by some of the saints that you've studied? Or tell us about how you kind of came up with those ideas.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, for those who aren't familiar with the book, it centers around Geoffrey, who's a bard, in a land called Trastaluche. But he meets quite a cast of interesting people on his way, including Xavier and Trencius,
Mm.
Ayla, and Carlos, and many, many more. And each of the good characters, if you will, are inspired by at least one saint. And each of their names, I won't give them all away right now, but each of the names in the book means something, right? It's whether it's connected to a saint or a specific virtue, like a Latin or Spanish or Greek term for that virtue. Each of them is meant to embody something. To give just one example, Trastaluche, luce, of course, being light, and trasta coming from the Spanish for trastar, which is to scatter. And it draws on the biblical understanding of Satan, who's often referred to as the disruptor. So the original name of this dystopian land before the forces of evil took it over was Haskaluche, which means light maker or light creator. It's two interchangeable meanings in the original language. But Trastaluche is light scatterer, then the disruptor of light. So every one of the names there and every one of the characters then draws inspiration from these virtues and from these saints that I'm studying both on a personal level, right, as a Catholic, and then also on an academic level as well. So that is true. I won't spoil all the names for the
Yeah,
reader, but
don't
yeah.
give it all away. Um, Now what is coming next? Is this going to be part of a series, or are you working on something else?
Yes, to both. It's hopefully, God willing, it will be part of a series. I have some ideas for where I want to take the second book, especially regarding kind of a literary reflection on the dark night of the soul, because it's such a prevalent part of the Christian mystical way. And then second, a reflection on, not to spoil the ending of the first book, but a reflection on the fact that if a resistance movement succeeds and wins a great battle, what does the evil lord's reprisal against the common people look like?
Mm.
And how do those people respond? Is it with anger against this resistance movement that's trying to bring them to a better state? Is it turning towards them and seeking them out? And how do we as Catholics would stand up for what we know is right when we know there's going to be backlash, right? And not just backlash on us. And so, and on top of that, I'm also working on a book of translations of Eucharistic dramas, 16th century Spanish plays that were written as part of Corpus Christi festivities with the sole purpose of exploring kind of the political, social, and spiritual implications of what we will now call, right, the Eucharist as the source and sum of the Christian life. So I'm working to produce a translations of some of these dramas that have by a writer who's never been translated into English before. And then And then obviously on my dissertation as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
that'll keep me busy too.
Yeah, that'll keep you busy for a while. Yes, I completely understand that one. So if people want to keep up with you, follow about your books, or go check out this new one, where can they find out more about you and your book?
Yeah, of course. So the book was published by the Way of Lucherium is published by In Route Books and Media. That's the name of the publishing company. And then I also have a website which is ChristopherJShia.com. Shia is spelled Rzhiha. For all of you in the comments who are wondering,
Yeah,
no, it does not make sense.
I'll stick it
Right.
on the YouTube video after I go
Excellent.
back in and edit it. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram and on X all under the same name or variations of C Shia or CJ Shia. So
Great, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and telling us about your new book. And I wish you the absolute best. May your dissertation be as painless as is possible.
thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. And I wish you the best as well with your continued projects.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We're going to wave bye. Thanks, Christopher. So
Bye bye.
grateful. Bye. All right. Well, that's a different one. I don't think I've had a high fantasy novel. I've had some young adult historical fiction. I've had some YA mystery. I'm trying to remember what was the last fantasy that I had on Cath-Lit Live. So I like it when we get to mix things up here a little bit. And I'm glad Christopher was able to come on tonight. I'm thinking about some of those Spanish mystics now and thinking about how interesting that could be, and kind of that how they could inspire this novelized idea of looking at sin and its effects on our lives. So if you haven't already, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm just going to wish you all happy reading.